Hello people of YouTube, my name is the Random Girl XD, and today I decided to make a video talking about 10 albums that have greatly influenced my taste in music. This music challenge first started on Facebook, and I decided, you know what, making a Facebook post wasn't good enough, and I decided to make a full video on this, mostly because I wanted to try out my editing skills, and because of all the recent news that's been happening, recently. I decided that since I'm so bored, yeah, let's just go make this a full video, just for fun. So the first album I want to talk about is Youthquake by Dead or Alive that was released all the way back in 1985. This album had to be on here first because not only was Dead or Alive my first favorite band growing up, but they were also the first ones to introduce me the beautiful decade that was the 1980s. I mean, hell, it was thanks to Dead or Alive that I discovered not only the great music of the 1980s, but also the culture and the really cool fashion back in the day too. They introduced me to a whole bunch of different bands from the 1980s, so this is definitely a very important album to me. As for how many bands they introduced to me, well, it's kind of been a long time, so I'll probably just leave a picture in the video with all the bands that I seem to recall that Dead or Alive introduced to me. Also, I wish more people had the same vocal power and energy that Pete Burns had with his songs. He was quite a powerhouse of a singer. As for what's my favorite song on this album, well, I would say You Spin Me Round, but that song's freaking overrated, so let's go in too deep. This is honestly a really underrated track by Dead or Alive that deserves much more attention. Now the second album I want to bring up is A Night at the Opera by Blind Guardian that was released in 2002. The song Battlefield on this album was actually my very first introduction to metal music. I first heard it in a video game known as Robot Unicorn Attack Heavy Metal Edition. Speaking of Robot Unicorn Attack, that game actually introduced me to another band that I'll get to later on in this video. Anyways, I thought that this album was absolutely killer, and even Battlefield was such a killer song as well. This was around the time where I wasn't really sure if I was allowed to get into this kind of music, since I was told from different types of media that metal music was actually satanic. Whoa, can you believe that? I'm shocked myself. Honestly, I find that whole claim baloney. I didn't care because the music was amazing. This album basically taught me that listening to metal isn't a bad thing, and that it's also really badass. As for my favorite Blind Guardian track on this album, well, it has to be Battlefield. There's definitely no contest, especially since this was my first metal song. Alright, now the third album I want to introduce is Super Smash Bros. Melee Smashing Live that was released in 2003. I always loved video game music at such a young age, ever since I got my first Nintendo GameCube when I was 4 years old. One of my favorite games was Super Smash Bros. Melee. This game has one of the most iconic and polished soundtracks in any video game that it was even given its own physical copy release. And I actually happen to own a copy of that physical copy release, and I heard it's pretty rare, so that's really cool that I have it. I love music that involves powerful orchestras, so this was definitely right up my alley. And hey, it's Nintendo for crying out loud. Nintendo always makes some great games and soundtracks. My favorite song in this album has to be The Great Melody. Honestly, it's just so cool how they were able to get so many different songs from different Nintendo franchises and just put them all together in a 12-minute iconic music bash. It's amazing. Okay, now the fourth album I want to bring up is Scumdogs of the Universe by Gwar that was released back in 1990. While Blind Guardian got me into metal, Gwar made me realize that you could do so much with this genre. They made the genre sound both funny and scary at the same time, which honestly blew my mind the first time I heard this album. They also got me into harsher sounding music, which I didn't really think I would be into at first. Also, I absolutely loved their unique costumes, and I'm a huge sucker for bands that even wear costumes. Hell, some of my other favorite bands that also wear costumes include Gloryhammer, Twilight Force, and Lordi. These guys also went one step beyond, and even made some extended lore with their cast of characters in the band. Hell, I even own some of the comic books that are based around them, and they're honestly really cool, so I highly recommend you check them out. As for my favorite song in this album, it has to be Slaughterama. I absolutely love the concept behind it, and it also sounds really cool too, so I hope you guys check it out.
With a battle cry go forth, which is give the people what they want. And what the people want could only be the senseless slaughter of the gutter slime that litters this nation for cash and prizes. Yes, this is the show where people bet their lives to win something big. Cause when your life is shit, then you haven't got much to lose on Slaughterama. This next geek is guilty of...
Alright, next up on number 5, we have Wild by Erasure, released back in 1989. Erasure made me appreciate synthpop a lot more with this album, and I absolutely love all the different ideas they have going on with this one. From their smooth and deep songs like Blue Savannah, to their even more crazier ones like La Gloria, this album is like a fun roller coaster from start to finish. And before anyone asks, yes, I actually do love the track La Gloria a lot. A lot of Erasure fans seem to hate it though, which I don't really seem to understand. It's a really fun song. I guess maybe they don't like crazy songs like this one. As for my favorite song in this album, well, I already mentioned Blue Savannah and La Gloria, so how about Crown of Thorns? That song doesn't really get mentioned a lot, and I really like it, so I hope you guys check that one out. Oh yeah, and fun fact, the first Erasure song I ever heard was Always, because it was in the video game Robot Unicorn Attack, the original one, not the heavy metal version. It's funny how things happen like that. You get introduced to two different bands from two very different genres in the same video game franchise. Okay, now the sixth album I want to introduce is The Fat of the Land by The Prodigy that was released back in 1997. With this album, I had no idea that you can mix electronic music with heavy metal elements. Big beat is a genre that I wanted to explore more, but I've been having trouble since I feel like The Prodigy has really created a sound that no other band has produced. Still, it makes me want to listen to more hard-sounding electronic music. My favorite song in this album has to be Firestarter. It's an absolute classic. Alright, and at number 7, we have Aquarium by Aqua that was released in 1997. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. What the hell? Aqua? But that band is trash! Now, before someone makes fun of me, let me explain. Eurodance music, and every other subgenre that falls under it, is a huge guilty pleasure of mine. As a very young kid, I was always exposed to a bunch of Eurodance music. And before anyone asks, yes, I'm European, Polish to be exact. I know a lot of people think that Eurodance music is annoying since it can get stuck in your head very easily, but it's still fun in the end. Aqua was probably my first Eurodance band I heard, if memory serves me right. I know I still have their cassettes somewhere, I just have to go find them in my closet. As for my favorite song in this album, it's a really huge close call, but I'm going to have to say Lollipop, or as it's also known as, the Candyman song. Now the 8th album on my list is Whammy by the B-52s that was released back in 1983. Now it's time for some North American synthpop and new wave representation. The B-52s were one of my first new wave bands ever since I discovered them back on the Just Dance video game series. I absolutely love Kate and Cindy's vocals on every song they perform on, and Fred is really funny and unique with his delivery. I picked Whammy over their other albums, mostly because I had the most fun with this one. My favorite song in this album has to be Song for a Future Generation. I love how in this song every band member introduces themselves in a really fun way.
Hi, my name is Ricky and I'm a Pisces and I love computers and hot tamales.
Hey, I'm Kate and I am a Taurus. I love tomatoes and looking at curlews.
Hey, my name name is Keith, and I'm a Scorpio from Athens, GA, and I like to find the essence from within.
Okay, now at number 9, we have Killer Instinct, Killer Cuts, that was released in 1995. If there was one video game soundtrack album that captured the 90s video game decade the most, it would definitely have to be Killer Instinct's Killer Cuts. Each song sounds like a different genre that was popular back in the 90s. There's like some sort of electronic house song, then there's also a hip-hop track,
Yo, check this out.
a heavy metal track, and there's so much more in this album. This is the kind of creativity that I want to see more in future video game soundtracks. As for my favorite song on this album, it's a really close call, but I'm going to have to say Controlling Transmission.
We are controlling transmission.
Alright, and the last album I want to bring up is Sailing the Seas of Cheese by Primus, that was released in 1991. I always love it when bands try out something completely new, unique, and experimental. Primus is definitely a band that has a lot of unique sounds going on that I rarely hear in other bands. The bass in a lot of their songs are just something else. I mean, hell, Les Claypool is a freaking god at that. A lot of songs made by Primus are really creative too. Maybe they might be a little bit silly, but I think that's what makes them so good. I wish there were more bands like Primus that would bring something new to the table. My favorite song on this album is probably Tommy the Cat. I also really love the music video where it mixes up 2D animation and live action. Oh hey! You reached the end of my video! Thank you so much for watching! This is my first time making a YouTube video like this, and honestly it's been really fun. I love editing and I also really love voice recording. I've been pretty tired doing the same old stuff every day, so I hope I can make some more YouTube videos in the future. Also, if you want to follow me on social media, check out my Instagram page where I post a lot of music memes. I also made a template for this challenge just in case you want to try out this challenge too and you don't really want to do a YouTube video on it. You could just make a simple post, maybe even tag me in it, and I would really love to see your choices. Also, for each YouTube video I make like in this format, I'm going to be introducing a segment at the end of the video called Meme of the Day. This is where I would post my favorite music meme that relates to this video. And hell, since I already mentioned Erasure, here's this somewhat related Erasure one. I mean, there's also other bands too. I guess you can kind of say it's more Vince Clarke related, but hey, it's still pretty funny anyways. Thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope I see you guys in the next video. Peace out.